If you think you can or you can't, you're probably right. That has been one of the biggest mindset shifts that I ever made in my life, and also one of the most impactful ones. If you're wondering where it comes from, it's a quote from Henry Ford. You can Google that real quick. But a fundamental belief in the idea of mind over matter is super important for not only creating a better career, but a more intentional and fulfilling life, at least in my opinion and from my experience. But keeping everything simple, let's dive into the top 3 mindsets that have really impacted the trajectory of my life and helped me get into a much more sustainable course of action. Let's dive right in. Welcome back to the Keeping Everything Simple podcast. I'm your host and fellow student, Michael Klukas, and in this show, we boil down complicated topics into simple and actionable tips. So the very first one, as I mentioned, is if you think you can or you can't, you're right. And the first point that comes out of this is that self-confidence and self-belief are powerful. And when I say powerful, I mean they are some of the most useful assets that you can hold on to in your life. For myself, I admittedly have had a problem with being overconfident. I used to weigh, 200 plus pounds as like a 12 or 13-year-old. I was round, to say the least, but also I had an abundance of self-confidence. Where that came from, I'm not quite sure. However, it was important for myself because having that self-confidence carried me through a lot of not only my education, so through primary school, up to university, and into my jobs and my career now, but so much of it came from that self-belief of, if I think I can do this, then I know I can at least give this a pretty dang good shot. And not everything worked out. That's kind of the fact of life, is that you can do everything right and still fail. You can still have things go wrong. But there was the belief, and the belief of being able to do it was a lot more powerful than ultimately the concern of not being able to actually, accomplish a goal that I was aiming towards. So if you think you can or you can't, you're right. And for me, that was super important and super impactful because it kind of put words to what I had gone through, while at the same time not so much giving justification to the overconfidence, but at least giving me a way to direct it towards something productive. And also along that same line, with the idea of mind over matter in this regard, it's also important to recognize the idea of self-fulfilling prophecies. Because if you are someone who constantly believes that you can't do something, that you'll never measure up to it, that you don't have the ability to actively chase down your goals or to reach for that dream you want, then you're kind of creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. For myself, I kind of put it as this idea that, again, if you think you can't do it, then you're probably talking yourself out of it before you've even started, before you've even tried. For myself, this has been something that occurred a lot when I was in school, whether that was primary education or in my undergrad years. It was going into a new class, going into a new grade level. I would always have just this like kind of mental battle and debate with myself of, I can't do this. Like, how did I get to this point? Even if I've had like straight A's or been doing great in this particular subject, I'd still think I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep this momentum. And that would be the conversation I'd have in the beginning of the year. But as the year progressed, I would constantly try to remind myself, pick myself up and say, all right, no, I can do this and I will do this because I have done this before and I will do it again. And ultimately, the negative talks, if we allow that to be the primary source of not motivation, but the primary thing that we listen to, then we're going to have a lot more self-fulfilling prophecies where what we believe to be the worst possible outcome will occur simply because that's what we were looking for. That's what we were expecting. And that means that's what we're preparing for, rather than the belief that we can do this, we can accomplish more than we actually think if we just believe that we're going to be able to take steps forward, not steps backwards. And real quick, thank you guys so much for watching. And if you are finding any value on this, if you watch this on YouTube, make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Ring that notification bell so you know every time that we upload a new episode. It really does help us out so much, and I greatly appreciate it. If you're listening to us on Spotify or a podcast app, then make sure you leave us a 5-star rating and give us a follow. That way you know, again, every time I upload a new episode. And it just stokes my ego just a little bit more. But with that, let's jump right back into the podcast. The other point under the mindset of if you think you can or you can't, you're right, was that our determination is a much bigger indicator of our success than we tend to give it credit for. And by this, I more so mean that if we are determined to actively create a certain result, if we're determined to chase after a certain goal or a certain dream, then we're so much more likely to actually take those long shots and see where we land up. For myself, there's been, like right now, as a good example, I am applying for undergraduate schools again so I can get a couple of intermediate accounting classes out of the way. So hopefully by the end of 2025, I'll be able to jump into a master's of accounting program. And that is a career shift and an education jump that I am making so that way I can actively have a better future and provide for my family and my family's needs and our goals. And I'm determined to make that happen. And I have the belief that I can make it happen. And yeah, it's terrifying in the aspect of that's really choosing to specialize in something and kind of putting my foot down saying, all right, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it well. But the determining factor was, again, the determination, the belief that I can do this, even if it's going to be hard. And at the same time, that I have the willpower to make it happen. And that's where the determination comes in. So we often overlook how much our determination, at least in the beginning, gets us on the right track, because if we're just putting one foot in front of the other, then we will eventually make progress and get to where we want to go. But we have to have the determination to keep pressing forward and not stall out or feel like we have to suddenly backtrack all the way to the beginning. The second mindset that really impacted my life was that if you immediately look for the next best thing, you're never going to truly be present. And this is something that I think I've talked about before, but was a huge problem for me and still can be a huge problem for me because of how future looking I tend to be, where I'm looking at like this idea of like the big picture and forgetting all the minor details that have to go into crafting a good plan of action. And if we're always focusing on big picture, big future ticket items, then we're never going to actually be present and we'll miss out on what's in front of us right now. Because a good example of this was when I was attending university for my undergraduate studies, I was trying to do on-campus housing, which I successfully did, but I wanted to really get into one of the houses. And we had dorms, and then we had actual houses that you could live in, but you had to apply to the houses because there was, obviously less room for them. My experience with that was unfortunately that I was kept trying to get into a particular house, one that I really thought would be awesome to live in, and an opportunity to get into one of them or a different house opened up, and I didn't take it. I didn't take it because I was thinking to myself, okay, if I just hold out a little bit longer, I should be able to get into this other one, and I'll be able to live in a house for my last year of undergrad. And that wasn't the case because of trying to always look for that next best thing, trying to get into, just a level higher in terms of what I perceived as good or better. I missed out on the opportunity entirely. And so I ended up in the dorms again for my final year. And yeah, it was the newest dorm that was just constructed, but still there was that unfortunate consequence of me losing out on an opportunity that was available simply because I had decided to hold out for what I thought would have been better. And there's a lot of examples that kind of pop up in my life that follow that same trend because I miss out on what's right in front of me because I'm chasing something else. And I don't want to have that be a pattern throughout the rest of my life. So I've been avidly trying to be more present and not always thinking the grass is greener on the other side, because I don't know if it is or not. Real quick, if you are enjoying this episode, then you might also enjoy our weekly newsletter, the Keeping Everything Simple newsletter. Yes, there is a very obvious naming scheme going on here, but that's besides the point. If you want to get an inside look into how some of the lessons and stories I talk about play out in my life, then the weekly newsletter would be a great way to dive deeper into that, as well as getting resources and recommendations for books, articles, other YouTube videos that will give you greater insight into some of these complicated topics and how we're going to be able to boil them down more and more together. Subscribe down below in the link in description to the Keeping Everything Simple newsletter, and I will see you in your inbox. All right, let's get back to the podcast. And this mindset shift itself has been so helpful because it allows me to be actively grateful for what I have and where I'm at. I thought this a lot when I started working directly at the height of the pandemic. So I graduated in 2020 from undergrad and then started working that same, like a month or two before my actual graduation date. So right before lockdown, right as lockdown started, I was working in retail. And one of the big things that ended up happening was trying to remind myself that I'm grateful that I can actively work right now, even if everything else is, kind of going up in flames. But I've taken that idea and used it in so many other parts of my life. It's not just that I am avoiding looking for the next best thing. I'm always keeping an eye out for the opportunities because opportunities present themselves to those who prepare. But it's being grateful for where I'm currently at. Like for right now, it's trying to be grateful and reminding myself to be grateful for the job I have, the opportunities it provides me, the ability to take care of my wife and take care of our family and our future goals, and set ourselves up for success with this next venture that we're going into. But it's being grateful for where I'm at right now and not just only focusing solely on what comes next, and still remind myself of, hey, I'm living right now. And with avoiding looking for the next best thing, the third kind of big piece that came out of that was another understanding that regret lives in the past, anxiety lives in the future, but fulfillment lives today. And I know there's like a Kung Fu Panda quote about that. Let me find that real quick here, just because I thought that one was super funny. Yeah, we have the quote from Oogway the turtle in Kung Fu Panda saying that yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. That is why it is called the present. And that's important because for myself, being able to stay present, stay grounded, and be intentional about what's happening today mitigates my anxiety about the future. It helps me overcome regrets about the past because Lord knows I've made mistakes, but it's so much more beneficial to my life to be able to say, I know I have regrets in the past. I know there's a lot of unknown variables in the future, but I'm grateful for the day. I'm focusing on today because one foot in front of the other will get me to where I want to go one step at a time. The third mindset shift that was super important is that the only certainty in life is change. Nothing stays the same, and that can be a good thing if you let it be. Now, the first kind of point that comes from that is you won't always be the same, and that's good. As I was talking about regret in the last mindset shift of like regrets of the past, we all have things we regret. Whether that was a particular photo we took on picture day, whether that was a particular comment we made to one of our friends, our partner, our family members. There's so many things that we can regret. However, they also don't define the rest of your life. They were a moment in time. They happened. Yeah, they sucked. There's so many things that I wish I could go back and undo, or wish I had done differently with a bit more intelligence and a bit more intention. But at the end of the day, I can't change them. But I'm also where I am today because of everything that's happened before. So I have to be grateful for them in some aspects. But it's okay to have regrets still. And so the reason why I bring it up and say you won't always be the same is whatever happened in the past stays there. Whatever happens in the future is yet to be determined, but who you are today is going to be different than who you are tomorrow. Bit by bit, you will change, you will grow, you will become someone new, and that's a good thing because that means you are constantly developing, you're constantly evolving. So don't let something from the past hold you back and make you feel like you will never be able to be more than you are now, because that's not the truth. The truth of the matter is you are going to grow, you're going to evolve, and who you are today at 15, at 20, at 25 is different than who you're going to be at 30, 35, or 40. And that's something to look forward to. And that's something to understand. You have so many opportunities to reinvent yourself and to grow into who you want to be as well as who you're meant to be. If you're looking for an entry into journaling or just want to get more mindful about your own productivity, then go ahead and check out our daily review journal. This is the first edition of that journal. Available now on Amazon. Combining my own kind of journaling prompts throughout the day, it is an easy way to get you into journaling along with easy formatting to follow. So from daily gratitude to a daily review, along with goal setting using tomorrow's daily highlight, and ending with any notes and miscellaneous reminders that you might have for yourself. It is a fantastic way to, again, start the habit of journaling, as well as get more intentional about how you control your own view of life and your day-to-day. So this is just one step in that direction on how I can help you guys do that. But follow the link in the description down below to pick one up today. And with that, let's jump right back into the podcast. Under that same vein, and under that same note, is because change is the only thing that we can truly rely on to happen in our lives, we have to understand that life can be rough, but it can also change for the better. With every high, there's inevitably going to be a low. And for every low, there's going to be a high. In Sing, one of the main characters, the koala, whose name I'm blanking on right now, he has a statement which is, when you hit rock bottom, there's nowhere else to go but up. And that is, it can feel a little bit, like it's minimizing the reality of situations where you might be in a really bad situation, and I want to acknowledge that, and you might be hard. But at the same time, that might just be a season of life that you're in right now, one that won't last forever, one that you won't be stuck in forever, because change is coming, change is constant, and change is inevitable. So being able to look back on our lives and see all the times in which we're, with hindsight being 2020, we're seeing the roller coaster that we've been on, where we've had the highs, where we are on top of the world, things are going our way, everything's coming up in our favor, and that's awesome. But then we also have the lows, where things just keep going wrong. We're getting dumped by our partners. We are failing a class. We're failing a project. We're having arguments with friends. We are having an identity crisis, the quarter life crisis. Check out my last video on that, or last episode on that. But so much of it is defined by periods of change. There's seasons of life, and you are going to go through so many different ones that it's okay to kind of bank on that, to understand that nothing really lasts forever in some regards. And that means you're going to have opportunities to try new things, to be a different person, to grow into a different sense of self, because change is always going to occur and should always occur. And not only that, with the idea of change, there's also the important lesson for me that came out of it was that we can't control necessarily what happens. We can only control how we react. And with that, that was such a freeing concept that gave me so much liberty around what I chose to do next, because it was no longer a matter of, okay, I need to do this because I'm stuck here or nothing's going to be different. Instead, it became an idea of, okay, I can't control what just happened. I might have impact in the situation, but the outcome is outside of my control. I can control how I react and what I do from here going forward. So being able to say, I'm no longer going to just allow this to be the situation that I'm in. I'm going to control how I'm reacting to the situation and guiding my efforts towards doing better, towards another opportunity, towards these next steps. So nothing is truly ever within our control, but at the same time, we can always control how we react to a situation, even if it's completely out of left field for us. So, of the three mindsets, we have the first one from Henry Ford: if you think you can or you can't, you're probably right. Then we have: don't immediately look for the next best thing, be present and be grateful for what's happening now. And then finally, the only certainty in life is that change is inevitable. Those have been three of the biggest shifts that I've benefited from really kind of ingraining into my mindsets, into the way I live my life, and into the way that I want to approach things in the future. Because there's so much that's yet to come. There's so much that I don't know about, and I'm not going to have anxiety about it and just worry about if it's all going to come up Michael. But instead, I'm focusing on what I'm doing today that's preparing me for tomorrow, but still allows me to be grateful for where I am while understanding that the best stuff is likely yet to come. But the only thing that I can do to really impact that is focus on being the absolute best version of myself today and putting my best foot forward in everything that I'm trying to do. And I hope that one of those three mindsets might be the unlock for you to start leading a more intentional life, or to feel like it's getting you to that next place that you want to be as an individual, knowing that so much of life is about mind over matter. And so much of it can be determined by just what we constantly tell ourselves and the stories that we live on. But with that, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. Make sure you ring that notification bell so you know every time I upload a new episode. If you're listening to us on Spotify, another podcast app of choice, leave us a 5-star rating. That really helps out this show and shares it with other people just like you. And I greatly, greatly appreciate it. Stokes my ego a little bit, but honestly, I just truly am grateful for everyone that does subscribe, that does follow, that comments, interacts. It really means the world. But with that, have an amazing day, you amazing people. I will see you all in the next episode. Make sure that you go out there and do great things. I'll see you next time.